Relax, the keyboard is off and the press box is closed, but the mic is just getting warmed up. Welcome to the Hockey Writers Ink, the show where the writer is fresh off the presses and the ink is not dry. Join your host, Lance Green, the guardian of the blue paint turned writer, and co-host SteelFlyers, as we bring you all the latest on the Philadelphia Flyers.
Hi guys, welcome back to another edition of the Hockey Writers Ink. As always, I'm your host, Lance Green.
And as always, I'm your co-host, SteelFlyers, and holy smokes. Hey Lance, we got somebody sitting in with us today, don't we?
I think so. It's a pretty familiar face to most Flyer fans, I would think.
I hope so. Ladies and gentlemen, by all means, give it up for Mr. Jim Jackson, the voice of the Philadelphia Flyers from NBC Sports Philadelphia. Jim, how are you, sir?
Doing great, guys. How are you? It's been not that long, but I said let's talk before the season starts, and here we are, very close to the start of training camp.
Very close. Rookie game is going to be next weekend, so I'm looking forward to that as well with the New York Rangers. That little rookie series there, I'm looking forward to that. Seeing the first getting out on the ice, you know what I mean? So looking forward to that. So I'll tell you what, since it's been a little while, Jim, why don't you fill us in on what you've been doing over the summer? How things have been going? Did you get a little time off? Did you get some vacation? I mean, you know.
Can't you tell by this bronzed? No, we went to St. Thomas. I don't tan very well. It goes white red. Yes, no, we went to St. Thomas. We went to New York for we do 3 or 4 days up there. Spent a lot of time in our pool this year. Starting to get a little bit back into golf, which might not be good for my mental well-being, but gonna give it a shot. And I did a lot of time relaxing. And I also I'm a voracious reader, and of all things, binge watching. Guess what I got caught binge watching? Talk about old school.
Oh, do tell.
Think old school. No offense to you guys, but I think you can both do that. So think old school. Think old series. What do you think I started watching and just couldn't stop?
I don't know. The $6 Million Man?
Not quite that far back. Not quite that far back.
All right.
Think 90s. Think 90s.
Let's go Friends.
Very nice. It was shot right at the same time. In fact, in the studio next to Friends. ER.
ER.
Oh, okay.
I'm telling you, I was one night, it was in May or June. I just sitting around, said, let me see what's going on. I just went to, I can't remember which streaming service it was. And I saw ER very first episode. I said, well, I'm not going to watch ER, but let me watch the first episode, just see what that's like. I watched the first episode. I had to watch the second. And I had to watch the third. I'm now almost done with season 5.
Oh, wow.
And it's 22 episodes a year, so you do the math. I've been watching a lot of ER, but it is, to me, and I used to watch it, but not religiously. It was during hockey season where I probably couldn't keep watching it. And back then in the 90s, we didn't have the access to these shows like we do now, right?
And reruns binge and watching all that.
Yeah. I remembered it being good, and maybe it says something about where TV's gone since, but it's so good. It is so well done. The storylines are great. The acting's spectacular. The way they shoot it, making with the moving cameras during the operations and during the procedures, and
there you go.
The music, everything about it. And Michael Crichton, who just passed away, but he's obviously outstanding. We know he's done a lot of other things, but I have no desire to stop watching. I think it went on for like 14 seasons, so I still got a long way to go.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was as good later, as I recall, when Anthony Edwards and George Clooney and some of those guys left the show. But I just watch it, and every night, pretty much before bed, I'll throw one in, find myself maybe watching 2, and I just really like it. So that's my summer. Not the real thing, and all of the other stuff I talked about. But it's been really nice. But I am ready for hockey. I'm absolutely ready for hockey. So here we are.
There you go. Well, speaking of hockey now, let's talk about the latest news. You got a new partner. So
interesting. It's not really that late, but they took a while letting it out. That's for sure. We've known for a while, but they made us not say anything. Yes. Right. I'm very happy. I mean, it's not a surprise. It's not someone I haven't worked with before.
Right.
Bush did some games for us last year. I've worked with Bush on some NBC games before that. Very familiar with him, obviously, from his playing days, his various stints with the Flyers.
Yeah.
Know his wife and his family well. His son was just a couple years younger than mine, came up through the same youth program. So, I know Bush really well. So this was, to me, a kind of a no-brainer. If he was interested, it was his job. And Scotty Hartnell's going to do quite a few games when Bush can't do the games because of his TNT obligations. So Scotty Hartnell will be in there, and he's also done games with us before. So no surprises there. Both great guys, both Flyers at heart, even though they play with other teams. But also in Bush's case, obviously he's become one of the top analysts in the business, and I have been absolutely blessed because whether it's Gary Dornhofer, whether it's Keith Jones, whether it's Bill Clement, and now Brian Boucher, I've always had in the booth with me a broadcaster who has been on the national stage. Gary Dornhofer was one of the lead announcers for CBC back in the day. Bill Clement, obviously, at ESPN, Keith Jones at NBC and TNT, and now and Bush at ESPN and now TNT. And then the only other guy who was in the booth was Steve Coates, and Steve Coates is Coatesy. So, I mean, you can't do any better than that. So I really basically have been just completely blessed with my broadcast partners. Can't wait to work with Bush. Can't wait to get Scotty in some games and get him up and running. And we're all excited for the season. We just had a lunch today, actually, and we're cautiously optimistic. Going around the table, and we had other members of the crew and our new producer at the table. But the genuine feeling is that people think the Flyers are going to be like at the bottom of the standings, and we just don't see it that way. So, I mean, some things could go wrong and lead to that, but I think there's a much better possibility of the Flyers come mid to late March, going into April. There's quite a few games in April this year, still being in the race for a playoff spot. And are they Stanley Cup worthy? No. But as you know, in the NHL, you get into the playoffs, you never know. Florida barely got in last year, and they went to the finals. So for the Flyers and their fans right now, you read the stuff, and I just went through this with football, where you read all the prognostications, and then after 1 week, some of those prognostications look so far out to lunch. Just don't believe the prognosticators as much as believe what you see. If Sean Couturier and Cam Atkinson come back and are productive hockey players, if Tyson Forster or Emil Andre or both emerge and play and become parts of this, if Cam York and Owen Tippett, Noah Cates, Morgan Frost, Joel Fair, I can go down the list of all these young players continue to take steps in the right direction, there's no way this team won't be at least in contention. Those are a lot of ifs. Some of those guys aren't going to take steps forward. There will be injuries. Maybe Coots and Cam are not able to come back. The Carter Hart situation is still out there. So there are things that could go wrong. Don't get me wrong. But to say that they're no chance they're going to be at the bottom of the standings here in the middle of September is just not accurate. I don't think they do have a chance to at least be in the discussion for playoff talk, as we move into the late part of the season, if a lot of those things I just talked about go in the right direction.
I'm with you. And, I remember when we talked about last year, too, and we said a lot of the same. We had, like, a lot of the ifs, too, and you had your 5-part plan and everything like that, and what you thought would be a good way for the Flyers to come out of the gates strong. And they actually came out of the gates really strong last year, and it was really refreshing to see them coming out of the gate strong this year. But Lance and I have been talking about this for, probably the last couple of shows, the last couple of months. We both agree and feel that it's going to take some time and patience is going to be needed. Because this rebuild is not one of those things that's going to be, okay, overnight, boom, you're going to suddenly be there. And we kind of agree with where you're coming from, Jim. We believe that there's a lot of young talent on this team, and if Couturier and if Atkinson and if some of these veterans can step into kind of 80% of where they were even, do you know what I mean, then and be productive, then yes, they could be part of that conversation. Do you know what I'm saying? We don't feel they're going to be scraping the bottom. Not by any stretch of the word.
The point I like to make, the point I I need to make almost all. I do these. I guest on about one of these a day, maybe sometimes one every 2 days. This time of year, I mean, this is not the beginning of the rebuild. Just
No.
because Danny Briere and Keith Jones are starting does not mean the rebuild is beginning. They are not tearing down anymore. The
Mm-mm.
rebuild actually started already with the Owen Tippett's, the Noah Cates, the Morgan Frost, the Cam Yorks already getting some things under their belt with John Tortorella instilling his, he doesn't like to call it culture, but, that he wants to have that, I'll call it a culture, the atmosphere. He's already instilled that. That is already here. So the rebuild has already started. So there are people who I really respect who cover the Flyers or who comment on the Flyers who make this sound like I've heard him say Carter Hart is not in an age where he'll be around when this rebuild reaches fruition. He's 25 years old. How long do you think this rebuild is going to take? Goalies are good into their 30s, well into their 30s, sometimes into their late 30s. So for me to say that Carter Hart, that would mean I won't be around certainly when this comes to fruition. I'm not even sure I'll be on this earth if the way these people are talking because
Yeah.
they don't. It doesn't take that long, first of all. But second of all, it's not like they're where Arizona was 2 years ago, where they have to absolutely strip it to the nubs and start. They did that. They actually did it unintentionally in some ways, and they already had their rebuild through the Hexa years, which has led to having some players, not many left from that, but Sanheim, Konechny, some players are left from that. So it is what it is you have guys in charge now who have an absolute plan they're going to stick to. And if this year does go sideways, okay, let's say, I hate even mentioning this, but let's say Atkinson and Couturier are unable to come back.
Yeah.
And let's say Owen Tippett gets injured and the season slides and they do go down toward the near the bottom. They will react accordingly come the trade deadline, and you'll probably see it, Travis Konechny or some players like that get moved. But I also have full confidence in those guys that if this team is about 2 points out of a playoff spot come the trade deadline, they're not necessarily going to do that. In other words, they're going to assess the situation, see if the youngsters are taking hold, see if the veterans are able to play. We'll have an answer to that certainly by the trade deadline. And the Carter Hart thing will hopefully the whole mystery will be gone by then. So you have a lot more answers by then. And then we move forward. I have confidence that they'll move forward in the right way. It might not be to try to win this year and make the playoffs. If they're certainly way back or significantly
Yeah.
back, for sure it won't be that. But if they're close or in a playoff spot, I don't see them going ahead and trading Travis Konechny. I mean, I just see them having an idea of what they're going to do here. But my main point is we're not at the strip down phase anymore. They already have one of the younger teams in the NHL. They have a bunch of players already on the roster who are, in my mind, absolutely part of this going forward. If Owen Tippett isn't, and he's 24, then Carter Hart at 25 probably is too, if everything works out. Noah Cates is 24. He's part of it, for sure. There's no doubt. Travis Konechny at 26, 27 now isn't that old either.
Right.
So they
Farabee's
have
still
good
young,
young talent on hand already. They have a couple of almost like free agents in Atkinson and Couturier landing on them. They've supplemented from down below as John Tortorella wanted them to with the likes of Mark Stahl and Hathaway and Paling. And now it's about the young players. And we get to see the guys who are here hopefully taking another step. Not all will, but hopefully some of them do. Wade Allison could come in and take a huge step, and he's never even talked about anymore as a prospect. And then the two that I'm really interested in seeing in camp and hoping they both have great camps, Tyson Forster and Emil Andre. If those two players become players who are legitimate NHL contributors, the Flyers' top 9 is pretty darn good. Now, their defense is a big question mark, but Stahl's very interesting acquisition. He turned Brandon Montour into an all-star. So, you can't just write this team off as a bottom dweller. It's just inaccurate. Why do you think they went out and got those players? Do you think management thinks that they're a lost cause this year? They wouldn't go out and get Mark Stahl.
Right. And I agree. I think, they did both Danny and, your guy Jonesy definitely came in and made the right decisions in that aspect and bringing the right veterans in for this team to help develop not only the defense but solidify the bottom nine or the bottom six on the offense with the guys you just mentioned and all that. But I think what is different than most years or most prior GMs with Fletcher and Hextall is that they're totally revamping um, the behind the scenes stuff
Yes,
as
they are.
well as far as
Development
player
for sure.
development. I mean,
Yep.
player development is loads better with brand new faces in there. Bringing in John Leclerc, you know, and now Danny Heatley even coming into the scouting. What did you think about that move and some of the others that are being made behind the scenes as far as up and down managements and everything not on the ice.
Well, if you look at the last almost 10 years of the Flyers, I mean, we went through really a rebuild with Ron Hextall as the general manager and drafted pretty high for several years. And I can run down the whole list of players. Some were busts, Nolan Patrick, German Rubtsov. Others are okay, Travis Sanheim, Ivan Provorov, you know, maybe not reaching what we expected of them all the way, but at least competent NHL players. Travis Konechny, certainly more than competent. But that the fruits of that rebuild didn't really take hold. Now, why is that? Were they bad picks, or maybe they're not? The development wasn't great, and I think they've decided that it might have been a combination of both, but at least development had something to do with it. So they've restructured that, and I think it's a good thing. I hear great things about Riley Armstrong. I hear great things about a lot of these people they've brought in. I'm not familiar with Danny Heatley's track record as a scout, but I know enough about Mike Eastwood to know that he was a great addition. Patrick Sharp is a very smart individual. John Leclerc.
Yeah.
They're good people. They know the sport. So yeah, they've revamped, and I think that development is going to be a strict focus for sure, which will make some of these picks, better. I mean, the thing is, they have two studs out there, right? Gauthier and Mishkov are studs, and they're coming in. But even without them, and I'm not sure we'll see either of them this year. We won't see Mishkov. We might see Cutter at the end of the year. Who knows? But the thing is, they're on the way, and there's still, without those two, a lot of good young talent here. And
Yeah.
they have 2 first-round picks in the next draft. So the rebuild is already well underway. People need to get out of this notion because the two guys just started this year as president and GM.
Yeah.
It's a new rebuild starting today. The rebuild had already kind of started somewhat unintentionally through the COVID years and so forth because they sank so low in the standings and got some high picks. And then some because they traded Claude Giroux and got a first-round pick and made some other moves. The Provorov trade certainly was aimed for the future. So they've enhanced it. And here it is, guys. You go by what the team does. If the team struggles this year, you keep building for the future, which they've already started to do. If the team surprises some, not necessarily me, but if the team is better than people expect and contends for a playoff spot and shows they might even actually make the playoffs, that then they're not going to think so much for the future. They're already set with 2 first-round picks next year. They don't have to trade for more picks, to be honest with you. They have a lot of young players coming and 2 first-round picks next year. And Michkov in 3 years, maybe less. Cutter in the next year or two. So I see this
Forrester
as a
coming,
rebuild
yeah.
that's so well on the way already. And yes, no doubt development is a big part of that rebuild. And what happens away from just the player moves, as you mentioned, Lance, is a big part of that rebuild that the fans won't necessarily see. But hopefully we see fruits of that labor because development is very, very important. And these guys have got to get better. I've seen, even before they made these moves, signs that it's getting better. A lot of guys who came up from the Phantoms last year, this is owes to Ian LaPerriere and the staff down there. Really looked good. I mean, Tyson Forster came in here last year, and he really looked good. Cam York was sent down. He came back up here, and he had really learned his lesson and obviously learned something down there. He played a lot better. And I hadn't seen that here in a long time. I hadn't seen where guys coming up from the minors jumped in and really looked good. They got you excited. Like these guys are learning down there. They're getting better.
Yeah.
And we saw it with those two and others. Sam Harrison. I can go down. There were 4 or 5 guys that came up from the Phantoms last
Ronnie
year that
Ataro.
really looked good. Well, Ronnie's still I got a big, huge moth here. You're gonna see in the camera here soon. So, I guess I got my wallet out and the moth flew out of it. But I didn't pay for lunch today, obviously. You just look at Ronnie is a situation. I think he might still need seasoning. Who knows? But yeah, he's getting lots of seasoning down there, and he's improving. Elliot Denoye, we're going to see. I think he might stick with the big club this year. He's another sleeper, guys. He's a really good player.
Yes,
Had
sir.
a great camp last year.
Yeah, and they can start him on the fourth line. He might end up there his entire NHL career. I don't know, but he'll be good in that role. But he could also sneak up when you have an injury and play in the upper two lines, I think, at times. So the future's bright. The present isn't as dim as people are saying.
Exactly.
And Lance, your point, well taken. It's not just about player moves and draft picks. It's about what you do with the young talent. And clearly, Jonesy and Danny are aware of that, and they've made a lot of changes. And I can't promise the new group will be better than the last, but you'd think they have a chance to be, because already the early signs are that things are getting better that way.
I think I even noticed it once Danny came in, just as a special assistant to the GM or whatever like that. I saw signs of things starting to change, even up in the press box, where some injured players or some of the young guys, if they didn't have a game with the Phantoms, partaked in the game. It wasn't them just playing on their phones over there. It was player development coaches starting to sit with them and go over different plays that were happening at the time. It was just subtle changes once Danny got there that were already taking place before he took the role that he is now. So definitely some good things happening behind the scenes, guys, as Jim said, it alluded to and all that. But Jim, what are your thoughts on the Frost signing? He signed a 2-year, $4.2 million deal for $2.1 million a year. Do you think it should have been longer? Do you think it was a good deal?
I think it's a fair deal, and I think it's fair for both sides, because he did play well enough last year and show some improvement to deserve a healthy raise, which he obviously got. I don't think he showed us enough to get a long-term deal. Bill Meltzer is one of Morgan's big champions in the media, and he really likes him. And I love Morgan as a person. I'm just saying he's got to show me a little bit more before I give him the 6, 7, 8-year deal.
Yeah.
And I think even Morgan would say that. A lot of his numbers were pumped up by a couple of huge games against Arizona. I don't want to denigrate anything he did last year, because he absolutely improved. In fact, I thought maybe in the last 20 games or so was the best I saw him. That was after the Arizona stuff, where he wasn't necessarily even getting as many points, but he was really starting to play better. They're relying. This is going to be his chance. The Flyers are still not very deep down the middle. They have Sean Couturier. Hopefully, comes back, and Noah Cates probably will stay in the middle. That second line center spot might be just right there for Morgan to grab.
Kevin
and if he
Hayes
gets a half year, he's going to get a chance to play with some really good players, and we'll see what he can do. And then, come the end of his second contract, if he plays really well, he's going to get a real healthy contract. So I think it's fair. I like the contract, like the signing. I haven't really disagreed with many of the signings in terms of the amount of money they've been getting. I was surprised by the Stahl signing, because I thought they had enough young defensemen. They need to get a look at Zamula this year. Can't send him down without waivers. And they have Walker already. But when I covered the Florida-Boston series for TNT, and I had a chance to talk with Paul Maurice, and I asked him about Brandon Montour, and he spent 75% of the answer talking about Mark Stahl, saying he has had that much to do with Brandon Montour becoming an all-star defenseman. So to put him maybe on the flank of a Cam York and see what happens, that might work. And then you've got Sanheim Ristolainen as your second pair, and then you figure out your third pair. Is Mark Stahl a first-line defenseman per se? No. Montour is kind of the second pair there, because obviously they had Ekblad. But you might move another guy up to play with York in other situations. Stahl will be part of the penalty kill, I'm pretty sure. But we'll see. Walker's another guy, 2 years removed from knee surgery. Usually when you really see the improvement there. I know Keith Jones likes him as a player.
Too.
Very
underrated.
He's not just a throwaway. He's playing for a contract.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see. But most of the signings and the trades, I was shocked by the Hathaway trade. I love it, but I didn't know they were looking that way. But once they went out and got Hathaway, Paling, I thought he's young, so he fits the profile. He's 25.
Yeah.
But then when they went out and got Stahl and Hathaway, you realize they feel they need some veteran players to help the young players develop. No question, that's the biggest reason. But they also feel like, hey, we can supplement a little bit here, and we're not going to be a half bad hockey team.
You know, one of the things that I think that we've all addressed and that we've all spoken about, not just in this show and not just from other things, is that the major differences from the last regime to this regime is number one, a plan. Okay? Everybody here has talked about it. Number two, the changes that have happened off the ice are things that we all felt were needed to happen for this organization to move forward. Do you know what I mean? The development of the players has to be key for this team to move forward in the future, right? And that's what I think that this new Orange has done. They've come in and done that. And it's just like you said, Jim, even if they don't make the playoffs this year, that's okay because they can continue on what they're doing because they're built to continue on with the future. They've got those 2 draft picks for next year. In the first round, they've got a lot of young talent coming in. You know what I'm saying? So the whole thing of it is this. You've mentioned it. You've seen it. There is a different kind of feel for this team. Not just the team, not just the guys on the ice, but management and all of the support staff. Does it kind of feel like that to you, Jim? I mean,
it does, but I mean, being completely honest with you, I won't really know until I'm at training camp. I went to development camp. There is a different feel to it. It's a different feel to it for me because Keith Jones over there, he's over there in the
and the other side,
it's so weird. But as far as the feel in the organization, I won't get a feel of it until I get down to talk to the players and I'm in the room and things like that. But from just an ancillary outside, yeah, there's a feel to it. I agree with you on the plan. I don't want to say, this makes it sound like Chuck Fletcher was like this mad professor and didn't have a plan. If Ryan Ellis stayed healthy and Sean Couturier stayed healthy, we might not even be talking about Keith Jones as president and Danny Briere as GM. I mean, it's hard to recover from those kind of debilitating season-long injuries. We're not talking about a week or 2 or a month. We're talking about Couturier didn't play last year. Ellis hasn't played basically in 2 years. And, that's your top center and maybe your top defenseman. In my opinion, he would have been their best defenseman. That's tough for any team to overcome, in addition to some of the other stuff they had going on with injuries and illness and this and that. So, it's easy now to say that Chuck's worst situation, I think the biggest problem was he came out and said aggressive retool, and then they didn't go out and get Gaudreau, and then they said we're going to be sellers, and they didn't move JVR. He would say things ahead of time, and then it wouldn't happen, and it made it look maybe like he doesn't have a plan. I think what really happened is they couldn't find a deal. They just couldn't find a way to get rid of JVR, and they couldn't figure out a way to get rid of salary to bring in Johnny Gaudreau. But if you go out and put yourself out there saying aggressive retool, you better do that, or the fans are really going to react in a bad way. I don't think it was that he didn't have a plan. I think
he had the ability to implement it.
Yeah, he couldn't implement it. And Danny, his very first trade, obviously, was very creative, the Provorov trade. So he's already shown he can do that. Although, even, in Chuck's defense, look what Danny had to do with Hayes and DeAngelo. I mean, they got nothing. They only lost half of Hayes' salary and got nothing for Tony, really. So, I mean, sometimes there's just nothing there. Now, I mean, that could beg the question, well, if there's nothing there, could they have done something with JVR? But that this team's not going anywhere differently based upon what they would have or wouldn't have gotten for JVR in his last year of his contract. So, so basically, there is a different feel, but I don't want to just pawn this all off, and this was Chuck Fletcher's fault, which is a common narrative out there.
Wasn't trying to.
No, I know you weren't, but a lot of people do, and He doesn't deserve that. I mean, Danny will tell you right now, if 3 years from now, Cutter Gauthier is now working into his second year in the NHL, or second and a half year, whatever you want to call it, and he's already a stud player. Like, he's shown he's going to be a #1 center. And he goes down for the season, and our #1 defenseman is, let's say, Emil Andre has developed into the top defenseman, all-star Kimmo Timonen, the second defenseman, and he goes down for the year, we're not going to have a good year. I mean, Aaron Rodgers just went out for the Jets. Their season kind of changed just because of one injury. It can't happen. Now, they won the game, but they're no longer Super Bowl thoughts anymore. I mean, I think that defense might be able to get them pretty far. But the bottom line is, most people, you look at the odds, their odds, how they dropped when the news came out about that. Injuries to key players that are season enders change the narrative. And that really did change the narrative for the Flyers these last 2 or 3 years. Was it all injuries? No. But if I had to rank the reasons why it went south, injuries was right up there, probably #1.
Played a huge part of it.
Yeah, they've got to get healthier. And that's another thing, Lance, when you talk about behind the scenes, they're making changes there too. I'm not saying the training staff had anything to do with the injuries, but they're looking into everything. Right. And, as a new regime, you get that opportunity. You go in and you make changes, and we see if it works. But they got to be healthier. I mean, you can't continually lose top players for the year and be successful in any sport. So all of what I said about them being contenders this year hinges upon health. If they are not healthy, if they lose Owen Tippett, or they lose, if it's Cam York who becomes their #1 defenseman, or whoever, or Carter Hart, who they could lose, if they lose them, the whole thing changes. The narrative changes. Not because Danny Briere is any less a GM, just because that's the way it is. And that's the way sports work. And,
exactly.
I am a big historian in general, but in sports history, I look back a lot. And you see a lot of different things when now, with the internet allowing us to, we can go back and look at what the media and the takes were about a team before and during a season. And now that we're years removed from it, looking back and seeing what happened. And it's unbelievable what some people say about teams going into seasons. Well, you go back and find on the internet some Street and Smith's NFL preview editions and read them for a particular year, 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And then see how the season goes. I mean, the injuries affect everything so much, but then after the season, we kind of forget about that. And the teams that were bad because management stunk, and the teams that were good are because the management was great. It's such an oversimplification. But if they do lose an Aaron Rodgers type of player, if you lose a top player for a season, it changes everything, no matter how good the GM did during the offseason and how good the coach is. It changes everything. So they have to be healthier this year. I think we're due, if there are such things as hockey gods, we're due a relatively, nobody's completely healthy, but a relatively healthy year, like no season-ending injuries. But whether that happens or not, we'll see. But if if this team is healthy, as I said earlier, and that means Couturier and Atkinson part of that health.
Yeah,
I don't see any reason why they can't be at least a playoff contender.
All right, so a couple points onto that. As far as health goes, you're right. The team, I wrote about it before, guys, in the past.
Yeah.
It's about guys getting the same injuries. A lot of the guys if you look into it, have had the same injuries. So I do think it was wise to at least look into, the training staff and maybe change some things around there. But as far as letting Chuck Fletcher off the hook, I don't think it was all his fault. No, but I mean, let's face it, Ryan Ellis had 1 year prior to being traded for that he played in all 82 games in his career ever. Yeah. So there was injury. There was injury history there.
Yeah, he had injuries that come because, quite frankly, he will sacrifice his body.
He played a lot of minutes.
I expected injuries, Lance.
Yeah,
but not 4 games in 2 years. 4 games played.
Definitely not. And the Kevin Hayes signing.
Chuck on that. I mean, Chuck got rid of Phil Myers and Nolan Patrick for an all-star defenseman. It was a worthy risk. There's no way you could expect him to miss, do the math, 82, 160. He missed 158 games or whatever over 2 years. It's not that much, but maybe it is 80, 160. Yeah, something like that. I mean, there's just no way you could expect that to be. So I can't. The Ryan Ellis trade, if he was healthy, would have been a home run for the Flyers because the other two have gone. I mean, Phil Myers has not been able to stick with two different organizations. Nolan Patrick, we're not sure he's going to play a game again. So, I mean, I can't really get on Chuck for that trade at all. You can't expect Ryan Ellis to play in only 4 games. As injury prone as you might think he was, he still had, you said he didn't play on all 82 games. You don't really look at that anymore. You look for 70 games played. You got to get into at least 70. He had some years where he didn't even make that. But they
3 years he hit over 70.
What's
3
that?
years in 3 years in his career, he hit over 70.
Yeah.
The 2 years prior to the Flyers trading him, he had 49 games played and 35 games
Broken
played.
hand, I believe. I mean,
the 2 years prior, yeah, just
shot.
some
I mean,
different injuries,
again,
but yeah.
This doesn't make him injury. Defensemen are in general injury prone. One thing about Ivan Provorov that is absolutely remarkable is the minutes he played. He did not miss a single game because of injury. I mean, he missed 2 or 3, right, for COVID, but he did not miss a single game, and still has not in his NHL career. The way he plays in his own zone quite a bit, blocking shots, relatively physical player. I mean, that's amazing for a defenseman.
Yeah,
really,
we agree.
Keith Yandel set the record, which was then of course broken by Phil Kessel. But and I love Jans, but he didn't block a ton of shots.
Right.
He was a different style defenseman. Yeah, those defensemen like Ryan Ellis are not going to play 82 games very often. But anyhow, we're arguing about one specific player.
We'll move on.
I'm not saying that Chuck was faultless. I was as upset as I'm not sure if I was on with you, Lance, but I certainly was on with Steel. No one was more upset about the Johnny Gaudreau situation than me. So I didn't they should have gone after him, in my opinion. But I didn't like some of the signings. I didn't like the Sanheim contract. I didn't like
the Kevin Hayes.
The amount they gave away. I actually liked the Kevin Hayes because they needed a big center at the time. Again, this is all retrospect. Does it look good now? Absolutely not. But at the time, Kevin Hayes was just entering his prime, big center iceman who would have been a great supplement to Giroux, Couturier, whoever they were going to have ahead of him. It was not. I actually liked that signing when it happened. So
was AV's guy
like a lot of people
on
social media. I'm not afraid to say I was wrong, but I didn't have as much problem with the Hayes one. But the Ristolainen, not that I don't like Risto, and he's developing into a competent defenseman, but they gave up so much draft capital for him.
Yeah.
The Ghost. There's a whole bunch of things that I didn't agree with Chuck on. So I'm not absolving him, but the thing I'm hearing, Lance and Steele, is that this is all Chuck Fletcher's fault, and that's such an oversimplification.
Yeah.
No. I mean, he did some stuff right, and he wasn't exactly dealt a nice hand either. But let's move on to current times too now.
Yes,
now, what do you make out of the Carter Hart thing about him changing everything and blanking out all of Flyers? Anything from his Instagrams and everything else. I don't read a lot into it, but there is that impending, decision weighing over us. I don't know.
It's just weighing over us too long. I just don't understand why this is there. I know it's complicated, but I mean the league has to be upset because I'm sure they wanted this to happen in the summertime when the announcement comes, and then any subsequent discipline, and here we are mid-September and nothing. So I have no inside information on this. I haven't talked to Carter. I love Carter Hart. I think he's one of the nicest athletes I've ever covered. I think if he was involved in this, he made a mistake. There is no question about it. If he was a witness to it and didn't report it, that's going to be a mistake, and he's going to pay for it. But I don't know anything. I don't have any inside information on it. It would be foolish for me to even speculate what's going to happen. My only thing on it is I wish it would happen, that they would get to this.
That's
are we going to drag this into the season?
Yeah.
I just don't know.
So on building on that though, okay, because and this is kind of what Lance and I had talked about previously too, is this. maybe that's another reason why they did the Provorov deal and brought Cal Peterson in, because, and sorry about the sorry about if you hear the co-host in the background there, but maybe that could be part of the
He
reason.
obviously agrees with you. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, obviously, but I mean, I really see Danny Briere and the management kind of making inroads into, just in case something were to happen. I mean, God forbid anything were to happen to Carter Hart, where if he might face any kind of suspensions or anything else like that. I mean, don't you kind of think that he planned a little bit ahead, and part of that Provorov trade was the Cal Peterson kind of thing? Or what do you think about that?
I think that might be part of it, Steele, but I also just think they needed some veteran goaltender depth in the organization. They're building quite a stockpile of young talent now in goal, but they didn't have that veteran guy. They had Sam Harrison, Felix Sandstrom, both relatively young goalies, certainly inexperienced goalies at the NHL level. And then they've got all these young guys coming. We're going to start seeing some of them this year. In fact, we're going to see them in camp, a couple of them at least, or maybe not. No, we're not going to see the one, but
just one.
They're in Europe, and eventually they'll. We're going to see one.
Carson,
who we're not going to see here for a long time, but
Right.
I'm talking more about Kolosev and those guys. But
Yeah.
they're building a stockpile, but they're all young. You got to have, in case of injury, a veteran, and now in case of something else, some kind of disciplinary action, for sure, a veteran goalie. So absolutely, that was on his mind, and they went out and got him as part of getting more draft capital, as part of dealing a player who probably wasn't going to mesh with John Tortorella anymore. So that trade had several levels to it, and I thought Danny aced them all. So I thought that was a hell of a first major trade for him to make, and
we
got a lot done.
I think it definitely had people take a step back. Maybe some other GMs go, "Oh, this guy's for real," and take him serious.
Anybody who knows Danny, though, and he's been around the league enough as a player and in his various capacities since he was a player, that people know Danny. He's the real deal. Danny
he's a smart cookie.
Smart, prepared, hardworking, gracious, nice human being, and I have no doubt he will give it his best shot to get this thing turned around, and his best shot should be enough.
We both agree, Jim. We both agree. We were very much leery at first. How you all are with, when major change like that happens, you're a little bit leery. We were a little bit skeptical about the fact that, Keith Jones, although a great broadcaster, hockey ops and, all that other stuff. But I'll tell you what, based off of how they did in the draft and how they handled the offseason and what they've done to this organization. I heard a quote from your ex-broadcast partner, and he said, and I quote, "We need to bring the excitement back into this building." Okay?
Yeah.
Do you think that's what they're going to be doing now?
Well, I do think fans love to see a team build. And you going back to what you said earlier, Steele, about the plan, they see this plan now. And I do think that Danny and Jonesy are going to stick, and Dan Hilferty, they're going to stick to this plan. So the fans can relate to that. So from that standpoint, yes. But what gets the building juiced the most? Wins. So they're going to have to win before really. I mean, I could see this thing where the fans still feel good about the direction it's going in, but if some things go wrong this year and they're losing again, it being a pretty empty building again this year because they're not winning. And that's what brings people back. The one time in the Flyers history where their attendance got better, even though they weren't winning a lot, was like year 3, year 4. They made the playoffs the first 2 years, got blown out by the Blues, and they missed the playoffs 2 of the next 3 years and got swept in the other years. So 3 years where they didn't win a playoff game, and their attendance still went up because it was growing from the very bottom, right? And people were just starting to fall in love with hockey, and Gene Hart was teaching them, and it was all that part of that. You're not going to get that. You get that at the beginning of a franchise. You don't get that again. And that goes with all the franchises in the city, including the hallowed Eagles. When the Eagles were not winning in the 70s, the vet was not that full. So you lose, people don't go to the games. if you put a plan in place as they have done and execute it as they have started to do, the fan base starts feeling better about it, but you don't necessarily see the seats fill until what? Until they win. Or you can have an artificial, um, what's the word? Fertilizer to that. Not the right word, but enhancement to that.
Yeah.
And you go out and get an Eric Lindros. They did that in the 90s after 3 straight years out of the playoffs. The Lindros trade was made as they were in their 4th straight year out of the playoffs. His first year was their 5th straight year out of the playoffs.
Right.
But, that was an artificial that got fans in the seats because they went out and got this. If they had found a way to get Connor Bedard this year, they would have sold a lot of seats. Mishkov, he might be enough to put some fannies in seats, but that's 3 years off. So that's what I'm saying, Steel. The energy in the building that Jonesy wants, energy only comes, for the most part, with a spectacular player, like an Ovechkin or a Crosby or a Bedard's supposed to be, or a McDavid, or more to the point, wins. And if they start winning this year and contending for a playoff spot, and you put that into the bowl of this plan they have, I think you'll see people start to come back. But if they're down near the bottom of the standings again this year, even if people are feeling better about it, the fact that they're building and they have a plan for the future, that doesn't mean they're going to be fannies in the seats and we'll have tons of energy in the building just yet. But it's around the corner. It's going to happen because, again, the plan is in place. They have good young players, more on the way, and 2 more first-round picks. And if they're having another bad year this year, that means they're going to have another high pick, maybe 2 if Florida has a bad year. So, you run with the punches that way. But the energy in the building is different from the energy in the fan base, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I feel the energy you're talking about. I feel it because when I go out, people ask me, hey, it's great to see Jonesy, great to see Danny. Looks like you guys got it turned around. So there's that kind of energy. You don't see that in the arena until the wins start. Or, like I said, a spectacular player.
Yeah.
If Cutter Gauthier just tears up the NCAA this year, he's been promoted enough that his arrival will maybe put some fannies in the seats if he tears up the NCAA and decides to come and play. But really, it's going to take that or Mishkov, if he just tears up the KHL for the next 3 years and is the best prospect outside the NHL when he arrives here, he certainly could do that. But those are few and far between. It's more about the wins. And even with those players, like when Lindros was here, my first year was his second, and the Flyers got off to a great start, and the Spectrum was jammed. But then they went into a deep slump. He hurt his knee. The team went into a deep slump, and empty seats started popping up. Even with a Lindros around or injured, but still on the team, it really is about wins. Yep. It's about that momentum you build, and then once you get that playoff run, then you hook people.
Yeah.
I mean, the Philadelphia Phillies attendance this year is so much better than last year. Why? Because they're better this year? No, they're not better. In fact, their record, I think, is starting to drift below last year.
Yeah.
But they went on that run last year, so all those people purchased tickets, season tickets, and plans and all that. So they're still selling, 40,000 a night. That's you go on one of those playoff runs in any sport except football, where there's just one game or whatever. But the series sports, the baseball, hockey, basketball, you go on runs, that carries over too.
Yeah.
And that builds the excitement. We're maybe a ways from that. Because as much as I say they could contend for a playoff spot this year, I'm not sure they have enough to go on a deep playoff run. I mean, a lot of things would have to be right for that. It could. It's not. Yeah. I mean, nobody saw Florida last year, but not likely. And where they're going to be considered a contender to go on a long run, we're maybe a couple years away from that. But nobody saw New Jersey taking the huge leap they took last year. So you really never know. I mean, I'm not saying the Flyers are New Jersey this year, not by any chance. Because you saw what the Devils were doing as they built up with this young talent, but their jump was over 40 points, right, in the standings.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah,
they went from way out of it, almost winning the division. So big jumps can happen, and I see the Flyers at some point taking that big jump. I don't think it'll be this year where they jump all the way to the top of the standings, but it could be within 2 or 3 years if you look at some of the stuff that's coming in and how John Tortorella fosters this. The whole vibe around the team, and whether they keep a good goaltender. I mean, yeah, it's not. I'm just, there's so many people who only see outside stories, the basic coverage of the team, not stuff that real fans look at that that are really diving into it. The average sports fan out there, most of what they're seeing are going to be national prognosticators, which have the Flyers right down near the bottom, no chance at all. And and they're talking 5, 6, 7 years down the road before they're even good. If it takes 5 or 6, 7 years to get good, and Tippett will be 30 years old. I mean, no, it's not going to be that. It can't take that long. It's just not the way sports work.
Yeah.
And if the Flyers are out of the playoffs for the next 4 years, if you're saying good is making the playoffs, well, if they're not going to be good for the next 4 years, that's going to be 7 straight years out of the playoffs. You're going to have a tough time selling tickets. So,
period.
I'm pretty sure they'll be competitive this year, but if not, if Couturier and some of those things go south, and they slip, then this management team will gather some more assets and they'll go heavy after the draft next year. And then next year, hopefully they're ready to take that step into contention. But I don't think it's going to be that long. I really don't.
There you go. Lance, you got any last questions
No,
here for the master?
I don't want to keep him. I think.
Oh, I'm fine. I can talk Flyers almost forever.
Almost.
Yeah, no, I think we'll dive back into him. Maybe when the Flyers have a break this season or something, maybe he'll jump back on with us and see how the season is going or whatnot. And we'll hear from him again. But for sure, it looks like the Flyers are definitely in a better spot than they were. Even a couple of months ago. A lot has happened. With the current roster, with prospects coming up and that were drafted, and like we said, behind the scenes as well. All things are leading in the right direction, I think, and hopefully this team is at least competitive this year, more so than they were, of course, last year. So signs
last year, 2 years ago they weren't competitive. Last year, not many games where they weren't right in there in the third period.
Oh, no, for sure. Under John Tortorella, yes.
I don't see a Tortorella
They weren't counted out of any game, but I mean, as far as wins and losses, it kind of took. But no, they weren't getting blown out by any means under John Tortorella, and that was a nice change. You at least saw the fans that did attend stay to the third period. They weren't going halfway through the game because they were down by 4 or 5 goals. For sure. But I think we're going to see some more W's this year, and hopefully everybody is able to come back healthy, and we're going to be able to see what this roster really has. So
really. I mean, Lance, you think about it, someone has asked me the biggest question marks, and they have a lot of them. Sure. You don't have 3 years out of the playoffs in a row without having question marks. The biggest one we already talked about, Couturier, Atkinson, their health. / Carter Hart situation. That's all kind of, to me, availability of players. 2 would be Cam York, Emil Andre, whoever. Do they have a top pair defenseman somewhere on this team? Because with the trading of Provorov, who I would argue was maybe not a number 1 defenseman, but he was their number 1 defenseman, that spot's open and they've got to fill it. So we'll see. That's a big question mark. And then the biggest question mark beyond that would be, as a group, the young players. You can call them young veterans now. Some of them are youngsters, like Andre and Forster and Denoyer, Harrison. How much do they develop? What bigger bite out of the team do they take? I mean, I have full confidence in Noah Cates and Owen Tippett now, taking big bites out of this team and being a big part of it. Travis Konechny. But how big a bite do those guys take? Which one emerges as a top 6 forward? Is it Joel Farabee? Is it Wade Allison? Is it Tyson Forster? They need another top 6 forward up there. Can Morgan Frost assume number 2? So, there's a lot of questions. A lot of them have to do with young players, and that's what happens when you're rebuilding. So if these young players, and again, not all of them will, it's not like it's a straight line. Some will go this way, some will go up and down like this. But in general, if those young players take that big step, this team will be fun to watch at the very least. Even if the other things go wrong, it'll be fun to watch those young players. And then you move forward. But all those things go well, health being number 1. I say they're in contention at least. Not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but come mid-March, late March, early April, I think it would be that they're still in the running. Now, at the trade deadline, if they're close, I'm not sure what Danny and Jonesy would do. If they are in the playoffs, I'm pretty confident they wouldn't. You just
Too
don't have a team
much.
get into
Yeah,
a playoff
yeah,
spot and
yeah.
then just let the floor out from underneath them. But if they're out, they're way back, 10 points or more out, or even like 7 or 8 points or more out, then I think they'll again look to gather more assets. They already have quite a few, and they'll gather more, and we'll be better off moving to the future.
Yeah, I
Awesome.
definitely think out of everybody in camp, I'm really excited to see Tyson Forrester.
Me too.
He really came up. He was a bright spot towards the end of that season when everybody knew we were out of the playoffs and everything like that, and we at least got a little showcase of some of these young guys to come up. And if he's not on this opening night roster, man, that's going to be tough.
That
I really,
that would be
really
a
want to see.
disappointment.
I really,
And
really want to see him and
Or
Elliot too.
or Deone. Yeah, I would love to
Yeah,
see him too. Yeah.
right, because he had a great camp as well last season and stuck around right up to the end in Deone. So two of those guys that are like Jim said, going to be ready to go, and then with others, still a year or two out, like this isn't as bad as it should seem to some people out there, and that I see, like Jim said, on the Twitters and everything else, and the fans, that dark, gloomy cloud is slowly moving away. So,
yeah, well,
it,
Ron knows. I'm sorry, Steele. Oops, I made it almost to the very end. Steele, you know that uh, the reason I called you by your other name, your real name, is that you were a student in my broadcast coaching, and as part of my prep, what do I do in August, September? I do my team notes files, right?
Yep.
So I've been doing all the other teams in the NHL, and I've been looking at the rosters. And sure, you have your elite teams up there at the very top,
Mhm.
but the Flyers, talent-wise, aren't far below
On paper,
many,
right?
and
Yeah.
several teams that were even in the playoffs. Everyone talks about, oh, look at their defense. Well, look at everybody else's defense. There's not many teams. I mean, they are missing, and I know a big focal point going forward is going to be got to find that stud defenseman. Now, it's possible Cam York could still be that. Emil Andre could come out of nowhere and be that. But as of right now, they don't have that stud defenseman. And clearly, as you look around and watch the teams now, you need to have that. So that's a missing part going forward. They've got to find maybe with one of those first round picks next year. Who knows? But and Bonk's a really good player that they got in the last draft, but I don't think he's a number one. He's more of a supplemental. Could be a two, could
Right.
be a four. So we'll see.
And
But
he's at least a year
the
or two
bottom line
away.
is that you look at all this and where it's going, and I look at the other teams, and it's like not that much of a separation of talent. They're really if these guys stay healthy. Again, got to stay healthy.
If
I don't know
yeah.
how many. I got to say it every time. But
Yep, I'm with you. I'm with you. It's
Yeah.
all good though. It's all good. So, one last thing I want to ask you about here, Jim. So, tell me about
yeah,
Alex's lemonade stand. What do you got going on with that? What are you doing with that?
I
You're a chairman
appreciate
of
you
the.
asking that. Yep, Alex Lemonade Stand Foundation, ALSF. I interesting story. Way back, early aughts, I heard about Alex's story. She was at that time doing this lemonade stand, not to raise money for her cancer treatment. She was
Right.
4 years old, 5 years old, but she told her parents she wanted to raise money for other kids. And this idea at the time took off locally, and her parents were from out of town, but they came here to go to CHOP, and so they settled here, and that all through the neighborhoods these lemonade stands popped up, and they raised a lot of money, and she pushed forward for it, and unfortunately she passed away. But while she was alive, I heard about her story, and I invited the family to a Flyers game. And so they came. They weren't the father, they weren't huge hockey fans, but it's a hockey fan. They brought Alex, and the family came. And I somewhere have a picture of us, and I can't find it. It really disturbs me. But it was a moment. I was so happy to do that. And then time goes by. I got involved with the Phillies, and for 14 years, I was just working all the time. And once I wasn't working with the Phillies anymore 3 years ago, in addition to the coaching, I said, I got to find a cause. And I mean, I don't know why I didn't find that cause back then, but I looked at what they've done. They've, in the time since, they've raised over $300 million for
Yeah.
pediatric child research, as well as for support services for families going through it.
Awesome.
And I said, bingo, that's it. And I reached out to her mom, and we got together. And last year we did our Flyers Press Pass, where we have a family that has been
Yeah, we saw that.
dealt the unfathomable blow of having to deal with a child with cancer, and they come to a game, and we give them the full treatment. The Flyers, outstanding. I mean, the Flyers took the ball and ran with it. They give them a ride on the Zamboni, a visit from Gritty. They come upstairs, spend some time in the booth with us, go see the Arena Vision. They go some players who aren't playing that are around, come see them. It's just awesome. And so we did that. We're going to do that again this year. And then this year, people at the foundation asked me to go become part of their advisory board. So I was honored,
Awesome.
flattered.
There you
So
go.
I'm on board with them. And anytime you have the donating spirit about you, you guys, you donate there, it's going to a great, great cause. And there's so many great causes out there, I understand. But this one is, when you see these kids, they had a function this summer. It was a big chef's event that they have every year. In addition to eating way too much, I got to see some of these families, and and how appreciative they are of what this foundation does for them. So I'm really happy to be part of that, and really going to spend a lot of time on that the rest of my days on this earth. So I'm glad you brought that up. It's on my website if you want to donate as well. Link to their website. But it's a great cause, and we're going to do Flyers Press Pass again. We might get if there's a Flyers player who's interested, we might become their charity for the year. We're hoping to do that, and some other things. But it's a great, great cause. I'm so honored to be part of it. But I'm also involved heavily with Ed Snyder Youth and Education,
Right.
and Flyers charities too. Are awesome, awesome charities. So as I've gotten older, I've gotten a little more charitable finally. And I felt these were causes that I should get involved with, and I'm very happy and honored to be involved
Awesome.
with them.
Well, that's great, Jim. I'm glad to hear
Awesome.
that, and that was a great story. And I just kind of wanted to highlight that, you know what I mean, because I know that's something that's very
I'm glad you did.
very near and dear to your heart, you know what I mean, and so I'd like to highlight that as well too. In case y'all haven't noticed, but on the ticker down below there is a link to Jim. If you would like to go check Jim out in his broadcasting school, all you have to do is check out the little ticker there, and that'll give you the address. And all you have to do is go down and sign up for some classes, and Jim will teach you how to be, a broadcaster or a sports commentator, or I was lucky enough to take the class, and I'm now one of the students to the master.
I don't know, Master, but
Well,
I'm
okay.
very proud of you. You've come a long way, and it's like the people who take this. It's a wide variety. I've got 12-year-olds, 59-year-olds. See, Steel, you're not the oldest. And podcasters to sideline reporters to radio talk show hosts to anchors, sports anchors, obviously play-by-play. The one thing that's kind of happened, I think I told you this last time I was on, is that it's gotten this rep that I'm only doing hockey play-by-play guys. I get a lot of those. It's not. It's for any kind of sportscasting.
Yeah.
I've done most of it. I haven't done a podcast. I've guested on a lot of them. I haven't done a podcast, but I have done all those other things I just told you about. I've been a sideline reporter. I've done sports anchoring. I've done a sports radio talk show, all that. So it's really to teach you about all facets of the business, no matter what your dream is. But you know what my motto is there, Steel? You have your dream. You got to go shoot for it, which you have done. And that's why I'm so proud of you, because we need dreams, first of all. We all need dreams. There's too many people right now who feel their dreams are unattainable. My dream when I was a kid in New York Mills High in upstate New York with a graduating class of 73 people was to do what I'm doing right now. And most people at that time, most of my classmates, even my own mom, as you know, Steel, thought I was crazy. What are you, crazy? So it can happen. If you have your dream.
But it worked out pretty good, though.
Stick to it. You shoot for it. Yeah. Well, my mom did finally jump on board once I got the TV side. But she didn't jump on board when I was doing radio for the Flyers. She still was like worried about. And when I moved over to TV, she said, "Okay, I guess you can take care of your family." I said, "Yes, I can take care of it."
There you go.
Yeah, that's being a mom. But yeah, you do. You have to battle these people who are fighting you, and it doesn't even pertain necessarily just to broadcasting. Any dream that you have to basically make your professional life, monetize your professional life to earn a living. I think we have a big problem in this country, in this world, of people who are at best bored and at worst miserable in their jobs. And if you can find something that is a passion, a true passion of yours, as you have done, and find a way to monetize it, and then spend some of your professional time, it might be a side hustle, but also maybe even a full-time hustle. If you are able to do that, you're going to be a much happier person. You're going to be fulfilled. And so I urge every one of my students, the biggest thing they can learn from me, a lot of broadcasting technique and all that we go through, but just in a more general sense, it's have a dream. You're going to have people try to shoot you down. It's going to happen. You have to believe it in your heart and between your ears. Put your nose to the grindstone, and it can happen. I'm living proof it can happen. And if it does happen, before I go, Chris Lewis is a youngster I met when he was 13 years old, broadcast play-by-play camp, not my camp. This was back in 2002, I believe. And I turned down my Sunday ticket once I figured out the YouTube aspect of it. I had a little problem because they had sent it to the wrong address, and I missed like the first quarter of the games. I was not very happy. But once I got my Sunday ticket up there, I'm scrolling around. I got the games up, and there's Chris Lewis doing a game for CBS in the NFL. He's now 31, I think. But, it's just such a great feeling to see, because Chris, he was told by, what are you doing? Go to this broadcast camp, but you got no chance,
Yeah.
And he's now doing football games, NFL games on national television. So
and there you go.
I know a lot of examples where it can happen. Do I know somewhere it doesn't happen? Absolutely. But what did I tell you, Steel? If you have a dream and you shoot as hard as you can for it and you don't quite make it, at least you aren't 40 or 50 years old looking back with regret. You say, I gave it my absolute best. It just didn't work out, and hopefully you land somewhere else. And I know a lot of stories where people find some other things on the way to their dream that they like doing too. You don't want to be. If I can't even imagine what I would be like if I didn't give it a shot against the wishes of many people, and like I'm now 60, and looking back saying I could have done that. Why did I not give it a shot? I mean, I would be beside myself. So give it a shot. Find your dream. Go for it. And if things work out, you'll be a happy camper.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jim.
All right, off my soapbox.
That's okay, because I'll tell you what, Jim, you've been an inspiration to me, and a lot of what we do here has been based off of a lot of your advice that you've done and have given. You know what I mean? So I can't thank you enough for all the help and guidance that you've given me. And
just keep pushing, Steel. Keep pushing.
Don't you worry about that, brother. It's pushing all the way.
And I didn't realize part of the perseverance that I always talk about with you is going to be all these foot issues. But what can I say? You're persevering through those as well. So.
Yeah, well, hey, if I don't have a good wheel, I'll just get a new one. Right?
There you go.
So there you go.
I can have you have a conversation with Gary Dornhofer. If you want a conversation with Gary Dornhofer, Dorney was my first television broadcast partner. Obviously, a Flyers Hall of Famer, part of the 2 Cup teams.
Yeah.
He's now 80 years old. He's still just the same Dorney, but he has 4 knee replacements. So he's replaced both of his replaced knees.
Yep.
Both hips replaced, both shoulders replaced. So he's the bionic man.
Yeah. There you go.
Maybe I should him give you a call. He's gonna say, "Foot? Really? You're gonna whine about a foot? Come on."
Well, and a knee.
You're up to the knee. Yeah, you want to stop it there. It's kind of going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, man, I'll tell you what. Well, Jim, it's always a pleasure having you on, and we really appreciate you taking the time to be on here, man, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, by the way, for the swag. You sent me a T-shirt. I completely forgot I was going to wear it tonight. And
well, that's okay.
I completely forgot about it. I'm just realizing it now that I forgot about it.
And, that's okay, man. You could just wear it proudly out and about and tell everybody that's one of your favorites. Oh, there you go.
I could have just thrown it on now, but there
you go.
Oh,
there you go.
Hey, check that out.
I should have worn this. Not so bad. But next show, I got to remember the next show to wear.
Next show we'll get you to put the swag on. I'll shoot you a text and remind you, right? Okay.
Yeah, please do, because I forget everything.
Oh man, well Thank you very much, Jim, for being on here. Thanks, Lance. This has been another great episode of the Hockey Writers Ink. We'll catch you guys all on the next show.